we are talking about one of my favorite topics. And I truly believe it's one of the most important subjects in the financial health realm of a med spa or plastic surgery practice, and that is profit margin and control. Over the years, consulting with aesthetic practices across the country, one thing has become very, very clear to us here at Diamond Accelerator. Almost every practice that I onboard has some type of margin problem that lives within their system somewhere. I have yet to run into a practice where their margins are completely tight. There is no error and no room for improvement. Because the reality is there's actually a dozen of small operational and financial mistakes that can really quietly compound and erode your margins. So at Diamond, we created a guide called the 99 Med Spa Profit Killers. So essentially what that is it walks through 99 different ways that practices unknowingly lose profit across pricing, operations, staffing, product usage, leadership decisions, all the things. So before we get started today, because I won't be able to scratch the surface of all the 99, if you want access to that guide where you can get all 99 of those profit killers, please comment profit and we'll send it to you. But without further ado, let's get into the ones that we'll have time to kind of cover today that I think are the most relevant that I see when I'm onboarding clients. So I see these specific profit leaks in almost every single med spa when I conduct what I like to call a financials by category audit. That's one of the first things that I like to do with my clients. And essentially what it is, it's a really detailed audit where I break down what the true cost is to perform every single service in your practice. And you guys, when I say detailed, I really mean detailed. My team, when I was still boots on the ground, they used to dread. They knew once a year, they would hear my heels clicking down the hallway and I'd be holding my laptop and they knew what was coming. They really dreaded it. And it was because they knew I was going to pull them aside and ask them really detailed questions that they really had to kind of think about. And when I say detailed, some examples of that is I'm looking at exact product usage. So when I say that, I don't just mean like, oh yeah, I'm grabbing one VI peel. No, I want to know how many pumps of back bar are you using? How many times are you changing your gloves? How many pumps of alcohol are you using? How many pieces of gauze are being, used during treatments? And understandably, my providers would be like, well, MJ, it just depends. Like, what if I have a bleeder? Or there's so many different factors that would come into play on, how many pieces of gauze I would use. And so that's why we always kind of joked when it was time to do the financials by category audit. I'm like, just give me an average. Like, where is your middle of the road? How many times are you switching out your needles if you're doing full face of tox? These little details really matter. Are we considering provider compensation and treatment time? If the service is 15 minutes long and you pay them, X amount per hour, what did they cost you in that 15 minutes? And when I introduce this to my clients, they all are like, oh my gosh, this is going to take forever. It's very rare. Actually, if I don't know if anyone's ever come to me saying, oh, I already have it. It's usually kind of like, oh my gosh, this is going to take forever. And I promise you, I do this exercise because it matters. So some owners, again, they think this level of detail is excessive, but honestly, you guys, your providers will too when you ask them how many pumps of alcohol are you using on average. But this is where the issues usually lie. This is where I see a lot of practice owners cutting corners here and there, and it happens here. Like it'll be like they'll tell me, for example, well, I just don't know. Like it's on average. I grab like 6 gauze. I don't know if I use them or not. Or, it's too much math for me to figure out, I pay her an hourly rate, but the service sometime lasts from 15 minutes to 20 minutes. It's too hard. There's too many variables. And when you're just saying it's too hard or you're cutting corners here and there, this is adding up to cost these practice owners thousands of dollars a month. This is the exact level of operational awareness. I see it every day. I promise you. This is the exact level of detail and operational awareness and financial awareness that separates my six-figure practices from my seven and eight-figure practices. And if you think a dollar doesn't count and add up, it does. High performing practices, they're going to understand their margins with precision. They are, not only going to understand them, but they are going to know how to control them. Because once this document is complete, the heavy lifting happens the first time you do it. And that's what I always try to tell my clients. The heavy lifting happens early on. After that, it's just checking to really change the price. You're going to have to know what your price is with McKesson, whoever you're purchasing from. If you get a new provider, asking them kind of the same questions and making sure that they're aligned. The heavy lifting really happens in the very beginning. After that, it's just yearly checkup and optimization. Because if you do not know this data, if you don't know your margins, then how can you protect your profit? And that's where we're going to get into, let's identify where these leaks happen. And I'm also going to tell you today how to fix them, because what I don't want to do is tell you where you're leaking and not tell you how to stop the water from coming out. So let's kind of go over what I like to call like the rules of profit. Okay. The first rule of profit is really simple, and we just went over it, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but you have to start by knowing your margins. And yet, like 99% of practice owners that I meet, they can't tell me the exact margins on their most popular services. They might know revenue, they might know, their monthly product orders, and I mean that like that's a big might, because I will tell you, some of you guys are out here just letting anybody order willy-nilly, and your P&L is telling on you every single time. I'm not kidding. I just saw this month somebody spent $11,000 on sticky notes on accident, but that's a song for another time. So when I tell you that if you do not understand where your money is going, or where your margins are, or where your profit lies, you don't know you don't know your true cost of what it is to perform these services. So run the financials by category audit. We will help you do it for yourself if you're not a client just yet. You would be so shocked to see what services are highly profitable and which ones are barely profitable at all. And the perfect example that I like to kind of wow people with, if they don't know these margins, is hydrofacial. Hydrofacial is a big one. So again, we just went over this financials by category audit. Run that. Know your numbers first. That's got to be rule number one. Okay. Because essentially that's where the very first profit margin leak is really going to happen. Okay. So the second leak that I see here is pricing without that type of awareness. So if you're not aware of what your margins are, and if you're not aware of what your profit is, the next mistake that I see is pricing. How are you going to price those services without that strategy behind you? If you're not using that data to make decisions, you're using emotion. You're using competitor pricing. You're using market pressure essentially, or what you feel comfortable charging your patients. So the best advice I ever got was to not assume what's in your patient's pockets. You have absolutely no idea what they're willing to spend to reach their aesthetic goals. Do not assume what is in their pocket. So the same is true as it is in sales, as it is when you are pricing your services. So don't base it off of what you feel comfortable charging, or maybe, what was set years ago and never reviewed because you didn't feel like updating your EMR. Your pricing has got to be strategic, and it has to be based on your profit structure. So your price has to support product cost, compensation, and your labor and your overhead, and essentially a healthy margin. Because without that structure, your practice might, it might feel really busy. You might be thinking to yourself like, oh yeah, when I get on my EMR and I see my calendar, we're back to back. Our utilization is over 90%. But your profitability is staying really weak. And you are sometimes left kind of sitting and wondering, why have I plateaued? Why can't I seem to reach a certain threshold? And generally, it's because of these profit leaks. So in order to adequately price your services, you have got to know the cost down to the gauze, I promise, and take everything else into consideration after that, provider experience, then your market research, and then price accordingly. Okay. Now let's move on to profit leak number 2. So this is going to be discounting without any type of financial strategy. So discounting can be a whole nother coaching call, and I believe we have done a couple on that. I have a lot of opinions on just throwing discounts in the air. But let's talk really specifically about how this is going to kill your profit and your margin. So again, constantly over discounting is really, I wouldn't even say silently, it's loudly killing your profits and your margins. So it's going to erode your margins and not only that, but your reputation faster than almost anything else in the business. So when you're constantly running promotions, heavy discounts, last second, we're trying to fill provider schedules, so we do last second offers and things like that. What happens is like your utilization probably looks pretty strong. People are taking advantage of these opportunities, but your margin is quietly disappearing. So your providers are doing these services, but you threw a discount up in the air just to get them busy, but you're actually losing money. So discounting should never happen blindly. Every single promotion needs to be evaluated against the margin of that service. It's absolutely crucial. Because again, if you don't know your margins, you cannot safely discount. You're just throwing them up in the air. Um, I mean, and not only that, but your reputation eventually kind of gets chipped away at. And I get a lot of practice owners ask me, well, can you explain to me what that means? Like, how does a discount hurt my reputation? We didn't give anyone an adverse reaction or anything like that. And what I usually say is it's not your reputation in terms of like your clinical excellence right away, but it slowly over time kind of appears like you guys are cheap. And maybe your skill is kind of aligned with what that price is, and you aren't valuing the advanced level training that your team members might have, and you're not valuing the extra mile that you go to mitigate risk or complications, and that can slowly chip away at your revenue over time, or your reputation, I'm sorry, over time. And what it can also do is really train your patients to have bad habits. There is a practice that is local to me, and I follow them on Instagram, and every single month they post on Instagram. It looks like 40 different discounts. And so what I've even done is I'm like in a habit, they do this like clockwork. So there is really no point where you will need to pay full price, because every month there's these handful of discounts being thrown at your face, and you're never really going to have to pay full price. And I can't help but wonder to myself, are they safely doing that? Do they know their margins in order to be discounting like that? And generally, unfortunately, the answer is no. So, okay, profit leak number 3. This one kind of goes hand in hand with the discounts a little bit, but this one I'm going to get really clear and granular. So another major profit leak that I see frequently is actually in memberships. And these are memberships specifically that are built without any proper due diligence, or memberships that are not adjusted accordingly, when things change. So if you have watched any of the coaching calls that we've done here at Diamond, we are huge fans of memberships. They can add, if structured correctly, hundreds of thousands of dollars in passive income for you and your practice, and it keeps patients sticky to you. I mean, there's 100 reasons why I love memberships so much. They're one of the most powerful tools in a med spa, if it is structured correctly. But here's what I have really seen. I have onboarded a ton of clients where honestly, I've found that their membership was absolutely destroying their profit, because it was set up on what we kind of outlined before: emotion, only market research with no consideration of their exact margins. So essentially what people are doing is they're looking at their competitors within like a 5-10 mile radius, seeing exactly like, oh, this is what they're offering on their membership. This is the discount that they're, doing. They have 10 different tiers. They're doing this, and this. And so they're just basing it on market research and a competitor analysis, when unfortunately, like that doesn't, it's not always apples to apples, and it doesn't always make sense that way. So when you are launching your membership based on what seems attractive to patients rather than, what is actually financially stable or sustainable to you, what you're really doing is offering discounts inside your membership without thinking about the cushion or building in that cushion into your pricing structure, so that you're not absorbing, those discounts. You're not taking the hit. You're not understanding the margins there. So Otherwise, the membership program really begins to quietly compress your margins. So I've seen practices generate such large membership bases and they're keeping people sticky to them, which is great, but their profitability declines. And because of the financial structure behind the program, and it was never really built to succeed, a lot of times people unfortunately have to dissolve those memberships and those people go elsewhere. So it needs to be set up correctly. You need to know your margins. And if you need to do a price increase in order to build space for that cushion of your membership, then you need to do that. There are really important steps that have got to happen prior to you launching this membership that have built-in discounts that you might not be able to afford. Okay. All right, let's get to profit leak number 4, and this is labor creep. So this one is interesting. Labor creep is really another area where profit is quietly disappearing. And when I say quietly, I really mean it. I feel like this is something where a lot of practice owners aren't even really aware that this is happening until I do an EMR audit or until I'm looking at their P&L and their payroll is not adding up to where they should be. So if you think about it, a healthy med spa, okay, this isn't thinking about like best in class. This is just thinking like a healthy med spa labor range. That's typically going to fall anywhere between like 25% and 40% of your revenue. So when your labor creeps well above that, your profitability is going to become very difficult to maintain. And you won't essentially kind of know why right away until you do have an industry expert looking at your P&L and able to kind of identify these things. And I say that because a lot of practice owners, maybe they're not in the office every day, they're not in the practice every day, maybe they're multi-unit, so they don't have eyes everywhere. So this is where it usually happens. It can be when staffing is growing faster than your revenue or your utilization. So usually when that happens, those staffing decisions are based on, you guessed it, emotion, perceived idea of really needing help, or you really do need help, but your revenue quite isn't there, or your team's utilization isn't quite there as well. Maybe your provider or team members' schedules are inefficient. This is a big one that I see. So I like to call them cheesy schedules, essentially. So what that means is there's big holes in your calendar. So maybe your injector, esthetician, whatever, has an appointment at 9 and then a huge hole and not another appointment until 1 o'clock. And we're not leaning into our scheduling protocols or they don't exist in general. And now, of course, I would agree with the argument. If that is what the patient needed and there's no way to avoid those holes, that's fine. The goal is to try to close that gap. So your front desk knowing that their SOP would be to kind of, start scheduling within that hole. But a lot of people don't think about this. They really don't think about this. They feel lucky that they're getting the appointment, which to an extent they are, but they also have the liberty to be strategic and own their own schedule. And another way that I see it too is roles and responsibilities are kind of unclear. And so what does that mean and what does that look like and how does that hurt your labor? So I see so often when I go over each team member's roles and responsibility that there are duplicate efforts happening and they have no idea. And what's happening is maybe somebody is staying late in order to complete that task, or someone's coming early in order to complete that task, or duplicate efforts just in general. When we are not optimized in our roles and responsibilities, there's generally always some type of overlap. And those little things, add up on you, and your profitability really demands discipline around staffing and productivity. So here's another one too. Here's a couple that I really always see, and this one is very sneaky. A silent killer, besides those things that I just listed about labor, is really abusing company time. And I see this way too much. And I'm telling you, it adds up and it's quiet. So for example, I've got team members coming in because maybe they live over 45 minutes away and they come into work 30 minutes early and they're doing nothing. I have seen people come in and eat breakfast. I've seen people finish their makeup. It really drives me nuts. Those 30 minutes for that one person, that really adds up. Another way that I see this is not clocking out for lunch or not clocking out when you get a staff treatment. Those are ways where your team are abusing the calendar. And if you are not auditing this, I promise you it's going to compound faster than you're ready for. So please pay attention to your labor costs before it's too late. Because what I see happen very frequently is team members having to have these course correcting conversations with their providers, and the expectation was never laid out there, in the first place. So lines are kind of blurred. So pay attention to where your labor might be leaking and draining your profit. Okay. All right, now let's get to profit leak number 5, product waste. Okay, so product usage is another hidden margin killer. And if your providers or your team members are not trained on product efficiency, treatment planning, your COGS are really going to quietly climb above that healthy range. So the healthy range here is going to be 15 to 25% of your revenue. Okay, and even these small little like inefficiencies that we're seeing in product usage, those are costing you hundreds, thousands of dollars. And that's significantly going to impact your profitability and your bottom line. Okay. When I was, still boots on the ground, I would see this happen in really like micro ways that something as simple as like using too much numbing cream. Like there's a appropriate amount that you should use. And so I would walk past sometimes like and just see a patient numbing depending on where they were at, or I would see my team numbing themselves and they would just be gobbed on. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's enough for like 4 people. So it's little ways where it's like unintentional, but if you don't have SOPs, if they're not trained appropriately, because I can see why when you're bringing someone in, you're like, oh, yep, this is the numbing cream. You're just going to put it on their face and let it sit for 30 minutes or whatever. You're not explaining like, oh, you only really need like the size of a dime, and that's going to help kind of numb your entire face or whatever. It depends on your percentage. But regardless, you don't need that much. And that's like 5 people. And I would see it in little micro ways like that. So I've even seen it in like huge ways, in macro ways. I've seen it where people, there's just no strict SOPs and there's no clear roles and responsibilities. So maybe somebody thought that they were going to put a product away in the refrigerator that was supposed to be refrigerated, but didn't. And then you come in the next morning and it's office use stuff that is just ruined. So it's little things like that. When we're not paying attention to our product usage, that's really going to eat away at your margins. Okay. And again, I can't stress this enough. This is exactly why detailed financial audits of your consumables, of your everything, KPIs, it's so important that these systems and SOPs are implemented and trained and the expectations are clear. Okay. Okay, now let's get to our very last profit leak here that many people overlook. And it lies actually, believe it or not, with an opportunity. Okay, so that is going to be what I like to call transactional patient care. So another major margin leak is treating patients transactionally instead of strategically and personalizing their experience. So highly profitable practices focus on patient lifetime value. Okay. That means treatment planning, long-term relationships, membership pathways, ascension models, and retention. When every visit becomes a one-time service, like maybe they're just coming in and we're not painting a treatment plan for them, a larger patient journey really is missed, and your revenue and your margin potential are really limited. I use a statistic all the time. Med spa hopping is up by 36%. If you are not keeping them sticky to you, then they're going elsewhere. Okay. My 7, 8 figure practices, they're not selling services like one-off commodities. They are selling transformations. And this is going to skyrocket your patients' trust in you, your authority as a provider or as a med spa, your overall ticket sales, and obviously then your revenue and your profit. Okay. So now we've talked about the most common leaks. And again, comment profit if you would like to see a whole list of 99 that we've been able to find. But now I want to get to the other side of this equation. We've talked about where we're leaking profit, but I want to talk to you today about the power moves that a CEO can make to control your margins and build your practice to be stronger. Okay. The first power move that a CEO is going to make is pretty obvious at this point. I'm sure you guys are screaming it from the rooftops. Conduct your financials by category audit. Ding, 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 ding. You know it. So conduct that audit. That means calculating your true cost to perform every single service in your business. You're not guessing, you're not assuming, we're not cutting corners. These are actual numbers. So paying attention to your margins. Okay. Power move number two, monitor your core benchmarks. This is something that I love to kind of always compare and to highlight to my clients. So every single MedSpa CEO should be monitoring at least a few key financial benchmarks for themselves. Um, and figuring out where these numbers stay within healthy ranges, and whether you're falling in a healthy range, best in class, or kind of like a red zone. Because when you know those benchmarks, your profitability is going to become predictable. You can understand where you're falling in the industry, and you're not having to feel like you're reinventing the wheel. So very, very minimally, you need to be tracking these financial benchmarks. It's going to be your labor, OpEx, COGS, marketing, and what your healthy EBITDA should be, what your target is, and where you're currently at. And that's at bare minimum. Okay. When you know that, you kind of know where you're falling and where your opportunity is. Um, okay. Power move number three for the CEO to take control of your margins today is going to be to increase your team productivity. So one of the fastest ways to increase profitability is improving provider productivity, but also not just your providers, but your admin team as well. A lot of times I feel like the KPIs are being slipped by the wayside for your admin team. So how can we make both of them more productive? This can happen through, again, like that cheesy schedule, optimizing your scheduling SOP. This can happen through a stronger consultation conversion. So really paying attention to those higher tickets, the personalized treatment plans, and not selling the one-off commodities. This could, using multiple modalities, treatment stacking, ascension models, and really having, aside from your providers, having revenue generating activities for your admin team to conduct in their downtime. And small improvements in your team's productivity is going to create a significant margin expansion. It's going to be huge in your bottom line. Okay, so power move number four. Think about and have this at the forefront at all times, increasing your patient lifetime value. The most profitable practices are not consistently chasing new patients. They're not consistently like, how can I get new butts in seats? Because the reality is, if your internal infrastructure is not ready for those new butts and seats, you're going to turn and burn them. So you have to do conversion training with your team if you can really handle those butts and seats. So again, the most profitable practices, they're not constantly chasing the new patients unless their infrastructure is ready, but they are focused on increasing the value of the patients that they have. So maybe they are in a position to get new patients, their infrastructure is solid. Continue doing that, but make sure your conversion rate is being closely watched, your team is ready to upsell, and successful practices are increasing the value of patients that are coming through the door. And this is going to happen again through memberships, treatment planning, treatment stacking, retail attachment, stricter follow-up systems, all the things. So again, I could go over profit leaks and ways to plug the gaps for hours with you guys. So please know that these are just a few examples of where your practice could be leaking profit. So please comment profit to receive our resource of 99 med spa profit killers. It's a playbook where essentially we started documenting these things, the most common ways that we are pointing out profit leaks in practices. It's truly one of the most eye-opening resources, I feel like, for a lot of practice owners, because again, most owners discover like several profit leaks that they did not even realize existed. And not only that, but they did not know that they could control. Profit is always going to be the result of structure, systems, SOPs, awareness, accountability, leadership. That your profit is going to show, and your P&L is going to tell on you. And when you understand your margins, and if you understand how you can control your costs and build intentional financial systems inside of your practice, the business is going to become stronger. It's going to be more scalable, sellable, and far more rewarding to own, because you will not have to be as involved. Okay. I can't stress this enough, knowing your metrics, knowing your numbers, and that includes not just your KPIs, not just your financial health check every month in your P&L, but knowing your margins, paying attention to your margins, I like to look at them, if at all possible, quarterly, but at the very least, it needs to happen yearly. So just take a peek at your margins, make sure nothing changed. Once you do your financial categories audit, go in, put every single down to, okay, it cost me 10 cents to use this many gauze. Make sure you know your numbers. Okay, that is the best place to be because then you know what levers you can pull. Okay. All right, thank you so much. Please, again, if you have not yet commented, profit to get the 99 Med Spa Profit Killers, we are excited to share that with you. If you loved this training, please make sure to share it with your team or another med spa that could really benefit from us. You could always catch the replay on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. And to get access to more free training that's going to help your med spa grow, please visit our link tree in our social bio and make sure to join us live every single Wednesday, 2:30 Central time, same place. Find us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. All right, have a wonderful day. Thank you.